welcome to the Erudite News Hour, MTM TV's news magazine. I am Kerika McGregor-Clue. Coming up in the news, Kansas bill forces pharmacists to fill ivermectin, hydrochloroquine as off-label COVID treatment. Truckers head to Ottawa to protest the vaccine mandate. Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi to open in 2022. Armed group attacks UN convoy, burns 2 vehicles in Colombia. Rockets hit Baghdad airport compound near the US air base. How our environment is making us sick and what we can do about it. We go right now for a short break, but stay tuned. The news when we return. Welcome back. A group of Kansas politicians tasked with steering public health policy are pushing to allow doctors to prescribe unproven treatments and preventatives for COVID-19 without any potential for responsibility. While the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has warned against using ivermectin and hydrochloroquine for COVID-19, some Republican senators want to shield doctors from legal liability and board discipline for prescribing the drugs.
Kansas bill forces pharmacists to fill ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Sounds like another win for us, guys. I know a few months ago, my doctor told me if I ever needed ivermectin that I'd have to go to a compound pharmacy because the chain pharmacies were refusing to fill it. If you go on to read this article, it talks about how unsafe these drugs could be and how they're not proven effective at all. But gee, they don't care about us any other time. I mean, how many pharmaceutical drug commercials have you seen where it says at the end, this drug may cause thoughts of suicide and even death? But they're worried about 2 drugs that have been around for years and years with multiple uses with very minimal side effects? Not buying it at all.
Ivermectin is used to treat parasitic worms, especially in livestock. Hydrochloroquine, sometimes abbreviated as HCQ, is a malaria drug that is also used to treat lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. Beverly Hoskins of Heston identified herself as a retired pharmacist. She said the Kansas Board of Pharmacy has their head in the sand and is not speaking the truth about alternative treatments. In my 45 years of practicing pharmacy, I have never seen a pharmacist refuse to fill a doctor's prescription for an FDA-approved drug for an off-label use, she wrote. It is shocking to me that a pharmacist can now tell a physician that they can't order ivermectin for COVID, but that is what is happening. Meanwhile, truckers from across Canada are heading to the nation's capital to protest a mid-January mandate which requires drivers returning from the United States who are not fully vaccinated to quarantine.
Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Hundreds of big rigs are rolling across the country en route to Ottawa in what some are calling a show of solidarity. Starting January 15, the federal government began requiring all truckers crossing the border from the United States into Canada to be vaccinated. And as of January 23, all non-Americans entering the United States at a land border must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. the Canadian Trucking Alliance issued a statement saying it does not support and strongly disapproves of any protest on roadways, highways, and bridges. Mike Million, President and CEO with the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada, says drivers who are not fully vaccinated pose a little threat. Truck drivers spend most of the time in the cab by themselves. They're isolated and hardly ever interact with the shipper or receiver. We're concerned that his mandate is going to cause more harm to public health than it's going to help because of the shortages of essential supplies that we may see on our shelves. And in other news, the Abrahamic family house, which encloses a synagogue, a church, and a mosque in a single complex, and which is scheduled to be inaugurated in 2022, is 20% complete. The project is closely followed by Pope Francis and the Grand Ahmed Al-Tayyab of Al-Azhar, who endorsed the design. The Abrahamic family house is designed by architect Sir David Ajay, captures the values shared by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam through three main buildings, including a mosque, a church, and a synagogue in one place. As such, the complex innovatively recounts the history and builds bridges between human civilizations and heavenly messages. The names of the three separate iconic houses of worship in the Abrahamic family house complex are officially unveiled as Iman Al-Tayyab Mosque, St. Francis Church, and Moses Ben Maimon Synagogue. We go right now for a short break. More in the news when we return. Continuing in the news, an armed group has attacked a United Nations convoy in southeastern Colombia, burning 2 vehicles but not harming any worker. According to the UN, its workers were traveling with members of the UN Office for Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, and the Norwegian Refugee Council when they were approached by armed men who made them get out of their vehicle. While 2 of the 3 vehicles were set on fire, the workers traveling in the convoy returned unharmed to their offices, according to the statement from the mission that monitors adherence to a 2016 peace deal between former Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, rebels, and the Colombian government. The mission and the convoy had been traveling to the rural area of Guayabero to meet with communities. It was stopped by the armed group in the town of Puerto Nueve, located in a rural area of the Guaviare department. Moreover, at least 3 rockets have landed in the Baghdad International Airport compound and near an adjacent U.S. airbase, damaging 1 disused civilian airplane, Iraqi police sources said. The rockets hit Baghdad International Airport's runways or parking areas, a source at the Interior Ministry said, noting that a civilian plane has been hit and damaged. The attack was not immediately claimed. The officials did not report any other damage or injuries in Friday's attack, adding that the damaged Iraqi Airways aircraft was out of use. Iraq's state news agency reported, citing the country's aviation authority, that there was no disruption to travel. And finally, from air pollutants to pesticides in food and cosmetic additives, modern life means constant exposure to environmental chemicals. Picking apart the effects will help us boost the health of humans and the planet. Every time we breathe, eat, drink, wash, exercise, get dressed, go to work, or climb into bed, we expose ourselves to potentially harmful substances, air pollution, synthetic chemicals, contaminated food and water, radiation, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, noise, and microorganisms, to name a few. Every year, between 9 and 12 million people die prematurely through the cumulative effect of such exposures, mainly air and water pollution, heavy metals, synthetic chemicals, and workplace carcinogens. Yet, our ignorance about what exactly is going on is breathtaking. For most exposures, probably the things you're breathing right now, we're not really sure what they're doing, says Michael Snyder, geneticist at Stanford University, California. Now to end the news, here are the main points. Kansas bill forces pharmacists to fill ivermectin, hydrochloroquine as off-label COVID treatment. Truckers head to Ottawa to protest the vaccine mandate. Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi to open in 2022. Armed group attacks UN convoy, burns 2 vehicles in Colombia. Rockets hit Baghdad airport compound near the US air base. How our environment is making us sick and what we can do about it. Stay tuned with us. Coming up, it's Miss Jenny Campbell with her news commentary and Dr. David Carr with health and wellness.
Welcome to this week's news commentary. I am Jenny Campbell, and this week we will be discussing the great ivermectin controversy. Now, the people who many have labeled conspiracy theorists have long argued that the suppression of cheap, repurposed drugs and other traditional concoctions to treat coronavirus was in fact the work of money grabbers, many whose objective was to push vaccines and vaccines alone. Governments across the globe, their operatives and health administrators have been repeating talking points handed down from big pharmaceutical companies and agencies with undisclosed agendas, even as millions of people worldwide continue to choose not to be vaccinated for various reasons. Ivermectin, a drug developed 40 years ago and is still listed on the World Health Organization, WHO, list of essential medicines, has been reduced to a horse dewormer. Advocates who swear by ivermectin have been lashed as promoting unsafe, unproven cattle medicine. Mass communication strategies have been rolled out across traditional and social media, and powerful talking points were widely distributed to prevent the use of this drug. Doctors who prescribed ivermectin have been hauled before medical councils and courts. Some had their licenses suspended. Even in the Caribbean, doctors who dare to even mention the word ivermectin have been silenced and accused of being anti-vaxxers, even though some are fully vaccinated and they have declared this publicly. As reported in the news earlier, more and more medical personnel in the US and other parts of the world are beginning to question this global blackout on the use of ivermectin. Doctors such as Dr. Roger Hunter prescribes ivermectin as a part of an early response strategy to treat the virus.
I want to emphasize ivermectin absolutely works. I have used it personally. I have gotten COVID when I treated my colleague at their home directly face to face. I treated my colleague, 71 years old, and I treated her mother, 104 years old. What is the thing? We treated early, very, very early. They both had positive COVID tests, and we treated early with ivermectin, antibiotics, with steroids to reduce inflammation and blood thinners.
Ivermectin is still seen as a controversial drug. While it was available in small quantities to the highest bidders, of course, there was never a full rollout to the benefit of the wider public. One can only assume that the governments in Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean held fast to the dictates of the WHO and other undisclosed bosses. But as Christians, we know for sure that God alone is in fact the giver of life and death. Death is a divine appointment. We therefore cannot say if someone would have lived or would die if they had COVID and had received a dose of ivermectin, bush tea, immune boosters, or anything else. What we know for sure is that whether one is vaccinated or not, one can still contract the virus and spread it to others. So, every care must be taken, vaccinated or not, to ensure safety as the society reopens. We also now know for sure, as we have always known, that regardless of treatments and the various methods, there is nothing like the blood of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. We are called upon as Christians to trust in the maker of humanity, who has the final say, whether it is time to live or it's a time to die. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching. I pray it was a blessing. See you next week.
Welcome to another health and wellness segment. Hi, I'm Dr. David Carr. Now, February is Heart Month, and heart disease such as coronary heart disease, heart attack, congestive heart failure, and congenital heart disease is one of the leading causes of death in Jamaica and in the world. Therefore, on today's episode, we'll focus on coronary heart disease. So let's get to the heart of the matter. Now, what is coronary heart disease? Now, you may be wondering what it is. Coronary heart disease is a serious condition that happens when plaque, and plaque consists of cholesterol, fatty substances, and other waste products. It builds up in your coronary arteries, which bring oxygen-rich supply to your heart. Your arteries are smooth and elastic, but when plaque builds up in their inner walls, it can make them stiff and narrow. The plaque could also break off, leading to a heart attack, stroke, or a sudden cardiac death. Now, the most common symptom is angina or chest pain. You might mistake it for indigestion or heartburn. Symptoms are often subtler in women. They may have nausea, sweating, fatigue, or shortness of breath, can join the typical pressure-like chest pain. Other symptoms of coronary heart disease include faster heartbeats, nausea, palpitations, which is irregular heartbeats, skip beats, or a flip-flop feeling in your chest, shortness of breath, tiredness, sweating, or weakness or dizziness. Now, experts think that coronary heart disease starts with damage or injury to the inner layer of your coronary artery. This damage can happen even when you're a child. The plaque can start to collect along your blood vessel walls when you're young and build up as you get older. That buildup inflames those walls and raises your risk of blood clots and heart attacks. In some cases, when plaque breaks, a blood clot may block the supply to your heart muscle. This can cause a heart attack. Now, if a blood vessel to your brain is blocked, usually by a clot, you can have an ischemic stroke. Now, if the blood vessel in your brain bursts, you might have a hemorrhagic stroke. These are usually brought on by high blood pressure. Now, what raises your risk of getting a coronary artery disease? Now, a number of things can make you more likely to have coronary artery disease. Now, some you can change and some you can't. Let's talk about a few. Now, age, especially being older than 65, being overweight or obese, having diabetes, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol, a family history of heart disease, especially at a young age, and being male, although men have a greater risk of coronary artery disease until the risk evens out at around age 70. Lack of physical activity, but remember to check with your doctor first before you begin any physical activity, but shoot for 30 minutes of exercise on most days of the week. Now, smoking or breathing secondhand smoke, unhealthy eating such as diets high in saturated fat, trans fat, processed foods, salt, and sugar. Now, how is this treated? It can be treated with lifestyle changes. Now, if you smoke, you need to quit. It's a big risk factor of coronary artery disease. Your doctor may also talk to you about your diet. So you may advise on taking less fat, less salt, and less sugar, and eating more vegetables, fruits, and lean meats and whole grains. It also helps to keep your blood sugar under control if you have diabetes and exercise regularly. Now, other things that might help include avoiding alcohol or at least cutting back. Keep at a healthy weight. Now, talk to your doctor about the right weight for you. Manage your stress levels and medications. Now, if lifestyle changes aren't enough, you might need medications. The drugs you take depend on your situation. If you have been diagnosed with coronary artery disease, you might take aspirin or medications to help to lower your cholesterol. Remember to talk to a doctor or seek medical care if you or someone you know has chest pain, especially when it comes with things like shortness of breath, heart palpitations, dizziness, or fast heartbeat, nausea, or sweating. Now, thank you for joining me for another Health and Wellness segment as we continue on the journey of obtaining, maintaining, and restoring good health. Please see my contact information on your screen, and remember to follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Dr. David Carr, and on Facebook at Dr. David S. Carr. Send any questions you may have to my email address at drdavidscar@gmail.com. Join us next time, and remember, God desires us to be prosperous and to be in good health, even as our souls prosper. Now stay tuned with us. Up next, we have Alicia Clark-Edwards with personal development, trends, and Camila Kelly with entertainment.
Hi, I am Alicia, and welcome to Personal Development Trends, where we encourage you to passionately and persistently pursue your purpose. This week, we'll be talking about Personal Development Action Plan and its characteristics. Personal development planning is a structured process that helps to create an action plan for self-improvement, growth, and development. However, before you can know what you want to do in the long term, you need to reflect on your current situation. What are you good at? Where do you need to improve? What opportunities are available? And are there factors beyond your control that could have an impact on your goals? To answer these questions, let us apply the SWOT. We are familiar with SWOT regarding business analysis, but it can also be applied to your personal situation. By using them, you can gain a solid understanding of where you are now, and you can think of where you want to go. In business, SWOT analysis uncovers the strengths and weaknesses of an organization and identifies the opportunities and threats that it faces. This works very well in business, but let us break it down from a personal perspective. Strengths and opportunities. By knowing your strengths, you can focus on your efforts on the things that you're good at. Therefore, taken together, your strengths and opportunities helps you identify potential long-term goals. Let's look at weaknesses and threats. By understanding your weaknesses, you know what to avoid, what to improve, and where you need to get help. Your weaknesses and the threats you face are the things that you need to be managed, mitigated, or planned for to ensure that your goals remain achievable. What are the characteristics of personal development planning? Number one, the personal development plan should be written down, and we cannot emphasize this enough. The best way to give a framework to your thoughts is by writing them down. Once this happens, the imagination will turn into reality and force you to take concrete steps towards them. Number two, the personal development plan should be realistic and feasible. Be practical with your planning. If you overextend yourself, you are setting up yourself for failure. Number three, the plan should reflect both long-term and short-term perspective. Do not aim for too high or too low. Prioritize your goals into long-term and divide them into smaller, more achievable ones so that it becomes easy to take one step after another. And final, it should be based on essential values. There should be a purpose behind the plan, and it should motivate you to accomplish the goal. Create a personal development action plan, and executing that plan will make you a more fulfilled and well-adjusted person. So here's an activity for you. Take out a piece of paper, fold it in half, proceed in writing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I challenge you to work on your SWOT this week. So we want to thank you for joining us. We hope that this information was of great value to you. For more personal development trends and insights, feel free to visit my website at millionairebeauty.com, where you will also learn more about our outreach arm, The Beauty of Growth. It's a personal development initiative for the nation's youth. I'll see you next week.
to this week's entertainment segment. I'm Camelia Kelly. What is a tradition? A tradition is the transition of customs and beliefs from one generation to another, or the fact of being passed on in this way. Traditions are often viewed as antiquated, unnecessary, or even bad, but some traditions are good, and we enjoy being a part of them, such as celebrating the birth, death, and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The annual convention of Keswick is another tradition, which is a convention that MTM TV enjoys partnering with. This week is a two-part series featuring the 67th annual Kingston Keswick Convention themed The Crisis, a Kingdom Response. Oh, I know some of you may be asking, what exactly is Keswick? I would do an introduction for you, but I think Reverend Dr. Stevenson Samuels, the chairman of Kingston Keswick, did an introduction like no one else could. We asked him to do it again.
Keswick is an international and interdenominational movement which started in Keswick, England in 1875. That's a long time ago. And indeed, it has spread throughout several countries, Jamaica being the first outside of England. Can you imagine? Under the motto, all one in Christ Jesus, its mission has been to bring together Christians annually for a week of spiritual reflection and enrichment. The Keswick movement in Jamaica began in Mandeville more than 100 years ago. In Jamaica, the Keswick movement has spread to Kingston, to Maypen, to Ocho Rios, to Montego Bay, to Hanover. Yes, all of these spaces and places, Falmouth and Black River, Moneague, all over Jamaica, we have various conventions.
Kingston Keswick had three profound speakers that not only educated, enlightened, but also inspired. Reverend Dr. Peter Garth reminded us that like the three Hebrew boys, our faith should stand firm in the midst of adversity.
I would like this week for us to learn some lessons from Daniel. Daniel prayed like never before. Jim Elliot was a missionary killed in 1950 on the mission field. He said, God is still on his throne and man is still on his footstool. There's only a knee distance in between. What a tremendous statement. I call on Christians everywhere to pray like never before, to maintain your integrity if we are going to respond to the crises that we are facing in our land.
Dr. Barry Davidson shared heartfelt words for pastors and ministers.
In this time of crisis, church leaders need to make sure that they are healed from insecurities. But not only must they be healed from insecurities, they need to also be healed from emotional pain. We need to take time to care about us, to find out how we can help ourselves. For instance, we need to rest, because rest is crucial. We also need to relax. We need to find some time when we can do some relaxation. Another thing that is crucial is exercise. We need to exercise. We need to also make sure we're drinking water. We need to eat well. We need to remind ourselves that our body is the temple of the living God, and so we need to make sure we're taking care.
And Reverend Roy Notice shared nuggets on dealing with the crisis.
We must always stand for peace. Practicing forgiveness is the kingdom's response to a culture of revenge. This is a very powerful verse. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. This verse is an amazing expression of the magnitude, depth, and reach of the love of God.
We will bring you part 2 of the 62nd Kingston Keswick Convention next week. So we will see you then. Back to you, Kerika.
Thank you for tuning in with us for this week's episode of Erudite News Hour, MTM TV's news magazine. On behalf of all of us here at MTM TV, have a great evening. See you next time.